Tales of the Jedi has come out, and I honestly have a lot to talk about. More specifically, episode 2, 3, and 4, because that's the Dooku stuff. I know it's kind of weird that I'm just going to talk about that side for this video, considering that episode 1 is Ahsoka, but I feel like Ahsoka should get her own stuff, and I still also feel like it should have been episode 2, 3, and 4 be 1, 2, and 3 for Dooku, and then 4, 5, and 6 for Ahsoka, because otherwise it's just a little awkward having her stuff in the middle of the two stories. Anyway, so we'll be talking about Count Dooku and a young Count Dooku, mind you. We'll be talking about what I thought, reviewing the episode, going by it, what happens on all three accounts. Let's get started. The episode starts with two Jedi on a mission. Sounds oddly familiar enough. We get to see a young Count Dooku and a very young Qui-Gon Jinn, with their designs being more or less interesting and their voices being, well, fine. So these two arrive to this planet that seems to be shutting them out, viewing them as outlaws. They go into a bar. Ah, yes. The classic place for meetups. And as they go in, Count Dooku doesn't hesitate to demand for the senator's son. So they're on a mission to rescue the senator's son. Prompts an encounter with some lady, the leader from the looks of it, to demand what they want. Obviously, Dooku makes his intentions clear in the sense that he is here peacefully, as he puts his iconic curved lightsaber on the table. This catches the woman's attention, which sparks a conversation about the senator, and how, despite his good intentions, he's done a very poor shit job helping his people. This leads to Qui-Gon to ask, why not elect a new senator? Something that, oddly enough, in our real world, we seem to also lack in. Anyway, yeah, she basically says that, I mean, it's hard. But it's interesting because this brings into the people start with good intentions, and this seems to be a correlation to Dooku's story, as we'll see in the other episodes. But continuing on with this one, we do get to see the people take Dooku and Qui-Gon to go, well, see the senator's son, saying that he's alright and all. Which, oddly enough, he looks a lot like Lux, Ahsoka's boyfriend, or ex-boyfriend, I should say. This Lux look-alike basically says that, yeah, he's seen how the world's being treated, and he's for the rebels side, which is actually funny, because he doesn't look injured, because he's on their side. But then all of a sudden the senator and his bodyguard team come in, which causes all of the people to kind of think that Dooku had lied to them about coming in peace. And, well, Dooku responding that he only came according to their own accord. Basically that the Senate had nothing to do with this, acting on his own will, as expected from someone like Dooku. Anyway, they do confront the senator, and, well, Dooku, proving himself to be a badass, he is, showing that pre-Sidious, pre-Sith turn, everything episode 1 related, he cares for people. He basically fights for them. And, yeah, he also rejects the senator's words that they work for the Senate, and it shows why he was a different kind of Jedi at that time, and how Qui-Gon Jinn would, well, turn out to be one of the best Jedi Masters in the era Anakin had joined. Granted, this episode we also see seeds of the dark side in the Jedi Master, when he saw the people getting hurt and the senator threatening to make an example of the village. He began to choke the hell out of him and even force-push Qui-Gon, who was trying to stop his master from killing the senator. Since that failed, Qui-Gon goes to free the son, which in turn the two of them together are able to calm Dooku down and basically keep everyone alive. And since after all of this is resolved, we see how much of a bond Dooku has to Qui-Gon, as he is humble towards his own apprentice, telling him that, yeah, his actions saved many lives because he was going to kill him, and Qui-Gon is much wiser than him. And oh man, I really love those. I feel like those two together are quite the duo, especially when we see how Qui-Gon turns out. So it is a very interesting duo. And for the episode, 7 out of 10. Pretty good, but could have done more. Episode 3 begins with Dooku and Windu. Honestly, this is quite the duo considering what happens in Attack of the Clones. But anyway, the two discuss the mission, with Dooku sensing that there's more to the plot than what they've been told, which prompts a discussion about following the rules and that they can't do much because politics and, well, bullshit shit that Dooku finds cap. He actually just calls it a cap or BS, however of the two you want. This is basically, unironically, what Anakin and Windu would argue in the Clone Wars era. Anyway, the two arrive to the planet and speak with Senator Lark. And honestly, I just detect so much bullshit from the first moment I heard him. Hell, even the Jedi can sense something's up. What's interesting is Dooku's question. What would you want Katri to leave without finding out what happened to you? And with Windu responding that he would rather her follow protocol. Gotta love Dooku seeing the complete fucking flaws of the Jedi. Anyway, they arrive at location with Dooku investigating the place, trying to figure out what could have happened. The fact that Dooku was able to say that the ship doesn't have any damage marks shows how very key-eyed he is. Though he does go into a dark side type way of wanting to learn the truth by pulling out his lightsaber. My homeboy woke up and chose violence. Anyway, Mace Windu tries to tell him to stand down, only for the senator to not only admit that it was the guards, but to also get himself fucking killed. This leads into a fight that clearly the guards weren't going to win. Though seeing Dooku and Windu fight on the same side is odd. And now, it leads to the two remaining conscience guards, one of them prideful enough to get himself killed, and the other forced to explain what happened. And how the senator was basically selling his planet piece by piece to get rich, making the residents of the planet justifiably angry. Now, the guard says something that is foreshadowing of things. The Jedi are just lapdogs for the Senate, not peacekeepers. This is something Dooku seems to have taken to heart, since he didn't say anything while Windu said to the guard that rules are in place for a reason. On the next scene with the guard in prison, Dooku actually sympathizes with him, saying that he agrees to a degree on what the guard said about the Jedi, though reminding him that this kind of way could cause the people to go a darker route. Unironically, him saying that is considering what happens with him later on. We get another Dooku and Windu conversation, with Windu unironically saying that they don't follow the Senate, only the Council. The reason this is ironic is that later on, when the Clone Wars happens, he's forced to follow Palpatine's orders, and he is the Senate.
I am the Senate.
Anyway, we get to the funeral, and it's nice seeing some familiar faces. After this, Windu gets promoted to the Council, which causes Dooku to be annoyed by this, since A, he suspected that Windu knew about this. B, they wouldn't have solved the shit if it wasn't for him. And Windu, in what I would presume a smug-ass manner, at least from what I could see, of course, tells him that he followed orders while Dooku's investigation got a senator killed. Although true, who knows if following the orders and not having known anything would have gotten good for that planet, because what if they got greedy and started asking for more for the senator and it's under their noses, and the Jedi, let's say they try to investigate but the Senate says no. There's a lot of fucking issues with this, and Dooku had the right idea. Anyway, the episode ends with Dooku understandably bitter, for sure doubting not just the Jedi but the Jedi Council, and within reason. Here, episode 4 starts in the library, compared to the last two, which was in a spaceship, with Dooku heading into the archive and uses Sifo Dyas's code to access the archives of Kamino, to delete it, making a damn good connection directly into Attack of the Clones, with Obi-Wan as saying that, well, the archives of Kamino are just suddenly gone, which also, this implies that Dooku is working with Sidious at this point. After this, after that scene, he leaves only to notice that there's something going on. He talks to Jocasta to ask what's going on. Her response is that Qui-Gon has encountered a Sith Lord. Fucking meaning that this episode is taking place in episode 1, which is honestly amazing. And the fact that the Camino archives were deleted during the events of Phantom Menace is just a cherry on top. Oh, also the fact that the stupid bitch seems to doubt Qui-Gon's word and calls it his imagination is honestly baffling. This coming from the stupid one who says that, oh, the archives are never wrong. Stupid bitch. Anyway, we get to see Qui-Gon Jinn when he was still alive and much older compared to episode 2, walking alongside another of Yoda's species, another Jedi Master, Yaddle. The two have a small conversation in relation to what Qui-Gon said to the council before Dooku comes into the conversation. He asks about the Sith Lord and, well, concludes that the council are ignorant for not listening to him, which honestly most of this would have been avoided if they really did listen to Dooku's warnings. I wouldn't doubt that Dooku has warned them countless times about it, but anyway, Yaddle does add to that they should be cautious in speaking of this since the Sith is a delicate subject. The conversation ends with something I was surprised, Dooku wanting to meet Obi-Wan. I had honestly thought that the two have met by this point, but I guess not. It was nice seeing Dooku's concern for his Padawan, as well as acting like a parent, viewing Qui-Gon as a grown man now, someone he has seen grow. It shows the attachment that he has to his Padawan. It's also sad that this would be the last interaction between the two before, well, after the title opening of Tales of the Jedi ends, the next scene is right after Qui-Gon's death, with Dooku looking at a tree. The same tree he would be in that fake world Yoda would be in during his trial. He lamented the death of his student by bringing a fond memory of, well, when Qui-Gon liked seeing the tree. He was speaking this to Yaddle. And an interesting fact is how Qui-Gon was born in Coruscant. Learning more lore behind these Jedi are honestly cherry on top of everything of this cake. Yaddle alerts him that they are all heading to Naboo for the funeral, basically the end of episode 1. Yet he chooses not to go since he does hold the Jedi Council accountable for his Padawan's death, justifiably. As he leaves, Yaddle follows behind, worried for his sake, since he was definitely angry by Qui-Gon's death at the hands of the Sith Lord. As Dooku arrives to another familiar place, he is mad at Sidious and tells him he went too far, showing anger towards, well, the Dark Lord himself. Though Sidious retorts by saying that it was all for the greater good and that he also lost the Padawan, as well as Dooku chose this path. Sidious also says that outright that he doesn't trust Dooku despite all that he's done, which Dooku doesn't take kindly to this, and is even lamenting how many people died because of his actions, as well as that he shows regret that he's betrayed everything and everyone. This shows there's more to the count than the Clone Wars TV show showed, to a degree, considering he did care for Asajj Ventress. It definitely rounds up his character a little more. The conversation goes south when Yaddle confronts the two, having heard enough. With Yaddle there, logically, Sidious assumes he's been betrayed, which Dooku affirms that this isn't the case. Yaddle tries to convince Dooku to not side with Sidious, while Sidious is basically saying that he needs to kill her to prove his loyalty, and reminding him that if Dooku wants to better the galaxy. As expected, from a Dooku that is still somewhat in between the Jedi and Sith, he's conflicted. But obviously he makes his choice and fights Yaddle. This fight gives me Yoda versus Dooku vibes, though it is still cool seeing a young Dooku holding his own against Yaddle. Also interesting how Yaddle does side with Dooku, even stepping down from the council, but even with her trying to sympathize and trying to still convince Dooku, he wouldn't be persuaded. Sadly for Yaddle, she does die. At first, it seems like a painful death that she got crushed, but after showing that she survived, she used too much of her energy to even muster standing up, so she's on the ground, and Dooku takes his chance to eliminate her, cementing himself to the dark side completely. I gotta say, the episode is clearly showing us the complete turn of Dooku, which I find interesting, as well as the music choices they chose. As you can see, things are a lot more interesting now that we have a completely fleshed out Count Dooku. Maybe not to a degree, because we haven't seen everything, especially him training Qui-Gon and such, but it just makes it interesting that a villain that honestly hasn't been shown a lot, even in Clone Wars, gets a lot of respect, but there's also a lot of correlation and connections with Anakin, how their turns are, how it's similar. It's just very interesting. Anyway, this is Green Origin and I'm signing out. Thank you for watching. Next video, for sure, we'll have the Ahsoka side thing.